ranks, basically from the IT division, and eventually was appointed as Vice President IT in 2009 till 2016. Concurrently to holding the responsibility of Chief Financial Officer from 2012 and 2016. So it covers both the IT and the finance. Mr. Al-Bakri led to the strengthening of the carrier's technology infrastructure and the modernization of its financial practices and processes. As RVP, Mr. Al-Bakri's responsibilities with the IATA includes defining IATA's members' priorities and needs in Africa and the Middle East, and this is where we really are in bad need of this expertise as tourism sector in Jordan, and we're glad that this office of the IATA is based in Jordan. He oversees the implementation of IATA's policies and the promotion of services and works with airlines, presidents, directors of civil aviation in the region to push for a more secure, safe industry through the implementation of IATA's safety standards. This is where we really are in bad need of those safety standards nowadays. Additionally, Mr. Al-Bakri works to promote the economic and social value of aviation and bringing the countries and promotions of the liberalization of the industry. In addition, he contributes expertise in corporate strategy, commercial strategy, and business planning to the stakeholders. On behalf of everybody attending today, I would like to welcome Mr. Mohammed Al-Bakri, and we would like to hear from him about the situation of the airline industry, especially in our region, and specifically about what will be happening soon in order for us to start seeing our tourism business back on track. Mr. Al-Bakri, we're waiting for you.
Thank you very much. مساكم الله بالخير جميعا. شكرا جزيلا لإتاحة الفرصة لي لمشاركتكم في هذا اللقاء. And يعني أستبيحكم عذرا إن I switch to English please because most of the content is in English and I believe that all our audiences are very, very familiar with English. So what I've done is I prepared a few slides just to put the issue in the right context, and hopefully that will lead into the discussions of the issues that are important, you know, I mean, for all of us today. And I will go through them as fast as I can because I really, you know, I mean, I don't intend really to lecture anybody or just make it one way, but rather just to share with you some information, hoping to generate some thoughts. So I will try to share my screen right there. Okay. Tell me if you see the screen, please.
Yes, we can see the screen very well.
All right. Okay. Just trying to put things in the right perspective. You know, what is aviation to our world, to our planet? That's what aviation really contributes. You know, in terms of facts and numbers and figures. 2.7 trillion worth of contribution of the travel industry to the world GDP. 3.6% of the global GDP is actually contributed by travel. You look into the number of jobs that are created, and these are very specific, high technical jobs and not only administrative type of jobs. 65 million jobs or more are actually supported by aviation. When you look in trade, worldwide, 35% of the world trade is actually supported, you know, by aviation. So when we talk about the airline business, the air travel business, it's not just a matter of moving a few passengers here and there, but it's actually a main pillar of the global economic and financial centers and powers. And when we look into the what's at risk today, this is what happened since COVID-19 started. Global revenues have fallen down by more than 50% actually, to approximately $419 billion, half of what it was in 2019, putting at risk half of those 65 million jobs that could be lost if the industry continues to being massacred the way it is being massacred right now. When we look into the airline revenue losses in terms of GDP for the Middle East, for our areas, $66 billion worth of contribution to the GDP has already been lost for the Middle East countries. 1.2 million jobs are at risk to being lost. And we have already seen a lot of those jobs are actually already lost. And we need to stop the bleeding going forward. And that's why a restart of the industry, which is the discussion of today's webinar, is quite important. Airlines, Middle Eastern Airlines, loss of $24 billion in terms of passenger revenues. That's money that has gone, and the airlines will never see them again as a result of COVID-19 and a result of the restrictions and travel. For Jordan, the air travel contributes 2.2 billion for the country's GDP and create 70,000 jobs. Those are direct and subsequent or indirect jobs related to the travel industry. We're talking about a huge contribution to the country's economy and the job market as well. In terms of what happened to the Jordanian markets, these are the numbers, these are the estimates, the latest estimates we have. Airlines have already lost 700 million, 52% compared to 2019. What's at risk? 34,000 jobs or more are actually at risk for Jordanians in Jordan. The impact and the total GDP for Jordan is more than $1 billion US dollars. So those really, put the impact of COVID-19 and travel industry, globally, but also, in terms of what happened here locally in Jordan. Financially, 2020 has been a terrible year. Never seen like it, anything like it in the history of air travel and aviation. Airlines worldwide, they've lost net profits more than $84 billion, which means that's an estimate of only 2.2 billion passengers this year would travel. That translates to about more than $37 losses per passenger. Normally, it's more than 4 billion passengers that get travel. That number, as we said, has been cut by half so far. For the Middle East, airlines were really making losses. Remember, the Middle East airlines were struggling. They were going through a financial restructuring. They were going through a lot of, difficult times in 2019. They were losing actually more than $6 per passenger in 2019. With the negative financial impact that has been brought by COVID-19 and the closure and the banning of travels, worldwide and in the Middle East, Middle Eastern Airlines would be losing more than $37 per passenger, a total of 4.8 billion losses of profits, for Middle Eastern Airlines. Where do we go from here? So that's really what happened, and that's the reality of our industry. Going forward, we knew that this could not continue. Travel bans cannot continue, otherwise we will completely dismantle the industry. The world-related organizations, had worked on a restart plan. And ICAO last month, did publish its takeoff plan, takeoff guidelines, a whole bunch of guidelines and recommendations that would help countries around the world to really restart their industries, restart air travel, while maintaining and ensuring proper measures for public health, safety and security of people. And if we look into really the whole concept behind establishing worldwide guidelines supported by ICAO, by the World Health Organizations, by ACI, we participated in those as well, is really to come up with a common set, a unified set of how we restart the industry. Air travel industry, as we all know, is built on a unified set of standards, agreements, principles, processes that have allowed air travel to expand and reconnect, connect the world. Um, and we need to maintain that unification. We need to maintain the unity and the mutual acceptance and recognition of those systems. When you look into the multi-layered approach that has been provided by the ICAO takeoff guidelines, it really touches every touch point of the air travel journey passenger, from pre-flights all the way until end of the journey and in transit and everything in between. For every step within a travel's journey, there has been a set of guidelines that have been issued to help really, first to ensure the safety and security of the traveling public. Second, to assure governments, regulators, health authorities, Department of Public Health, that the air travel industry will not act as an agent for respreading the virus into their communities. And I'm not going to bore you, but these publications are available online, widely published. We've shared them with all the governments, with all the regulators around the world, Jordan included, and you can see the multi-layered approach that has been put in place, accepted by countries and accepted by airports and accepted by airlines and all the service providers for air travels, to ensure the public health. In flight, the airport, in flight itself, and at the arrival stations as well, very detailed set of guidelines. And we would love, to see really that more and more countries, expedite the adoption and the implementation of those guidelines. Going forward, we have seen and we have heard that a lot of countries started to relax their rules in terms of travel restrictions. They started to open up their borders with some requirements. One of the requirements that we've been looking at very closely, and by the way, the ICAO takeoff guidelines do not recommend quarantine at all. We ran a survey about 10 days ago, and we found out that 80% of all travelers actually, wouldn't travel at all if quarantine is being made as a requirement by governments and by local regulators. This will mean that quarantine will actually hinder the restart of the industry rather than help the industry to restart and regrow. And if you look at countries, the same surveys, or we asked them, are you concerned about, catching a virus? Are you concerned about your, certain risks and so on and so forth? You find very much similar percentage of people who say that they are concerned about the virus, but they're also concerned, similar percentage, about traveling to destinations where quarantine, is required. And these are facts and figures that really have to be taken into consideration for regulators and for governments when they are ready to open up and restart the industry. They really need to look at the numbers and the facts and the figures. Also important, if you look at all the countries that have not opened up their borders, they have not allowed air travel to start. And you look and you compare them to the countries who have opened up and allowed air travel to start taking place, but required quarantine. Very much, they lost the same number of passengers, the same number of people. So what this shows that whether you open up or not, or you open up and you require quarantine, you're not gonna get any benefits. You're not gonna get, any people who are interested really in traveling and visiting those destinations, which reflects on economies, which reflects on tourism, which reflects on everything we've talked about. Another important aspect that has been in discussions in the news, in the media, amongst countries, everywhere, testing. And why is it important? And why is it needed? And when will it be needed? Again, if I make reference to the ICAO takeoff guidelines, ICAO takeoff guidelines says, yes, they would recommend testing if done properly. what properly means. To us, really, it has to be rapid, it has to be fast, it has to be reliable with 1% or less in terms of inaccuracies. And it really has to be scalable, something that could handle hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of passengers at airports. If we don't have tests that could really be done this way, then tests will act as another roadblock in terms of restarting the industry. We have published, papers that are worked out with the World Health Organization. Listing out some of the criteria or some of the requirements for tests really to be effective and used effectively at airports at departing, destination. Reliability really, used to be have to be used for high risk markets and not for everything. It really needs to be less intrusive than the technique that is used today. The technique that is used today is a bit inconvenient and could cause a lot of inconveniences and for passengers at airports, especially if it's done at the airports. And it really needs to be done prior to travel, not at the travel journey, itself. And if we need to do testing at airports, it really needs to be fast, less invasive, and doesn't add cost to the passengers or to the traveling airlines. We've seen countries in our region in the Middle East issuing regulations about 3-4 days ago, requiring passengers to be tested before they travel to the country, when they arrive, and the airlines will bear the cost of the testing. That's not gonna, help tourism. That is not gonna help rebuild the industry. We need to make sure that we really adapt testing in a proper way. What we have also been doing very closely is we have people working 24/7, looking at all the regulations worldwide that are being issued by each and every government worldwide in all the countries around the world, collecting all that information and presenting it online in an easy to use dashboard where people can really see what are the government policies, what are the travel restrictions, whether there is a quarantine or not, whether there is a requirement for testing or not, and everything that could be found. And I invite everybody really to take a look at this dashboard, which is a collection of huge amount of information that is updated as soon as a regulation gets published by any government or updated or revised. We capture it and we make it available for the traveling publics, to be aware of really what's going on around the world. I've also made available all the content in regard to COVID-19 and how do we risk mitigate COVID-19 in terms of the air travel, and it's available online, free of charge for everybody to make use of it. And it's actually classified and categorized exactly by the same classifications that ICAO issued its takeoff guidelines in the 4 different categories. I hope I didn't take longer than the time I was allotted. And with this, I end my presentation, and I should be able also to unshare my screen if I can.
Would like to thank Abu Alia for this beautiful presentation. It covered basically the importance of aviation to the world, to the world's economy, to Jordan's economy. We heard about the risks and losses and jobs that are being lost because of this crisis that the world, this pandemic that the world is facing. We heard about the recovery needs and how we should be living with the COVID-19 situation in the coming near future. We heard about the effects of quarantine, and most importantly, we heard about the confidence of passengers, whether they are confident enough, the general public, to travel or not. We will leave all the questions. We wait for all your questions. We hope to receive them text-wise, and we will answer all the questions at the end of the meeting. I would like now to welcome, on behalf of our 50+ participants, Captain Haytham Mistoub. Captain Misto has been, for the past 34 years, he has had experience in aviation for the past 34 years in the civil aviation and airline industry. Captain Misto is a captain, airline captain by profession, aircraft captain. He held many managerial positions within the airline, including the president CEO of Royal Jordanian. On the academic level, Captain Misto holds an MBA in aviation management from Maastricht School of Management in the Netherlands in 2007. Currently, Captain Misto is the CEO, Chief Commissioner of the Jordan Civil Aviation Regulatory Commission since February 2017. He has the keys of our airports, so he would decide when he will give us the keys so that we can open up. Captain Misto is also the Vice Chairman of the Arab Civil Aviation Organization. I'm sure now we will be hearing the Jordanian side after we've heard some of the international side from Abu Alia. We'll hear from Captain Misto about the Jordanian aspects of our situation. Captain Misto, the floor is yours.
Okay, Masal Khair, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Nazzal, for the introduction. Thank you, Jatawa, for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor for me to participate in this important webinar, and I'd like to welcome all audience. If I can share my presentation now.
تفضل.
Yeah. Okay. Of course, as we all know that this global pandemic has enabled all the world to think in a synchronized manner. So our problems are no different from others. And the concern for everyone is how to manage the situation and how to mitigate the consequences and the impact of this pandemic. Aviation, as Mr. Abu Alia, Mr. Bakri said, is becoming, or it is, an economic enabler. It's not merely a method or a way of transportation from A to B. For Jordan, the numbers says the story. The numbers tells the story of the impact on tourism, on employment, and on the economy as a whole. 70,000 jobs are involved, directly and indirectly. 2.2 billion add to the GDP. Other than that, the connectivity. Jordan is important and is in vital need for air connectivity due to many reasons. We don't have open seas, and we have let's say geopolitical issues surrounding us. So the air connectivity is a must, is not a luxury, it's a necessity for Jordan. Having said that, in this presentation, I'll talk about the policy strategies, the business continuity during the pandemic since beginning of this year, or the February or March, and the business restart, and we have some concerns to share with you. On the industrial support, I will talk about two levels: the governmental level support and the regulatory level. That's our part. On the governmental level, we all know that there are four-phase approach strategy on the government: the protection phase, adaptation phase, recovery, and sustainability phase. The government has defined sectors which were highly impacted. Definitely civil aviation, we knew, and it is evident that it is one of the very first sectors got the impact, the negative impact out of this crisis. And it was noticeably noted that the impact will be very painful. Having said that, the Ministry of Transport they worked on this and collected the feedback from all stakeholders. What are the stakeholders' needs and what are their concerns and how we can help and support. It was studied case by case. Again, the defense law issued many orders supported the aviation sector, like the social security orders, financial incentives, and exemptions from lockdown, and of course the Jordanian Civil Aviation Regulatory Commission were appointed as a member in the National Crisis Management Committee. So our representative, which represents the aviation, was a permanent member 24/7 within this Crisis Management Committee. Again, a member of the National Epidemiological Committee, again from the civil aviation, considering and realizing the importance of civil aviation. Additionally, I was appointed as the head of the high-level committee for travel and tourism reactivation. The recommendations from this committee were adopted, implemented, and continually evaluated. The authority, the civil aviation, were given the authorization to issue permits during the lockdown for the employees working in the aviation sector. Of course, we had to keep a collaboration and cooperation with the national and international aviation community. So on the regulatory level, business continuity plans developed and implemented. And of course, to ensure that the safety and security oversight mechanism, and this is the main target for any civil aviation authority or regulator in the world, to make sure that safety and security are well maintained by having a positive oversight. Of course, we know that we have a tendency to be distracted. Normally, we can be distracted because of this pandemic, but we made sure that our targets, our objectives are well maintained. In addition to that, the aerospace was continually operational. So the airspace of Jordan was operational, and the air flights were crossing the airspace from all over the world. Contingency plans and risk assessments were requested from all operators after providing the necessary guidance material. Alleviation measures have been promulgated by the civil aviation to the sectors, providing the necessary flexibility without compromising acceptable levels of safety and security. We had to, as we all know, that pilots, crews in particular, need a validation of their licenses. And this is done in a simulator. Sometimes simulators are not in Jordan, they're outside. So what can we do? We had to put some new rules, and in coordination with the ICAO as well, and in line with the international trends, how and the best practices, how we can assure the continuity of the business, the validation of the pilots, and the assurance of that safety and security are well maintained, not only for the pilots, for the engineers, for the cabin crew, for the air traffic controllers. Business continuity took two levels. First level, providing for the necessary guidance material for the sectors. I mean, for the airports, for the airlines, we have provided the guidance material to have a safe and gradual business restart. After that, the operators, they came up with the standard operating procedures. And we have accepted them, or we gave some comments. After that, we had to do the oversight on the application of those SOPs and confirming the readiness of the sector components prior to business resumption, it was evident by the application. We applied that on the resumption of or the continuation of cargo flights, repatriation of flights, and the domestic flights to Aqaba. The gradual response and restart, it's worth to say that cargo flights and operation of cargo flights never stopped from day one. We had to be prompt in this action. We took the necessary measures to put the appropriate guidance material for all cargo in and out. So Jordan was exporting cargo from non-stop and was importing cargo as well. Maintenance flights, we have maintenance centers here for the aircraft maintenance centers, and they had the contractual commitments with other operators to receive their airplanes and to maintain them. And we came up with proper guidance material and proper mitigation measures that we will keep this process continuing without any interruption while maintaining the safety and security on all levels. Followed by repatriation of flights into Jordan and out of Jordan. And the private jets as well was there and operational. Training flights for the academies and approved training organizations. We have simulators here for certain types. It was resumed under certain processes, and you can see now the training flights for the academies operational since a while ago. And of course, we have all heard about the resumption of our flights, domestic flights, though it's one destination, Aqaba, but it is a challenge to make sure that the system is reliable, and the components of the systems, including airlines, service providers, airports, are doing the right thing in the right way. Of course, this is a beginning to start and to restart the international flights as a strategy, which is under process, which is the question for everyone is asking now: when are we going to resume international flights? And that's a very legitimate question and important question that is everyone is thinking about. Business restart, we had higher responsiveness as a civil aviation since day one, or even before. We had a proposal sent by Jordan to ensure that the smooth resumption of international flights, this by the exchange of passenger health status information regarding the COVID-19 symptomatic, and the PCR test. So such information would really give the assurance for any country that the passenger, we are receiving passenger, the passenger is suffering from no COVID-19 symptoms, and this can be exchanged on a bilateral or multilateral status over an existing platform, which is the advanced passenger information. Again, early adoption of public health corridor and the CART initiative by the ICAO and other and the WHO. And again, we had mutual collaboration with other civil aviation authorities to harmonize procedures regarding cargo security exchange, and that really smoothened the process of cargo exchange between a couple of countries, which is beginning to start at a later stage passenger-related procedures to make sure that we have harmonized procedure to make things smoother and seamless operational. Of course, we had concerns, and we still have concerns. As we all know, the ICAO has, and of course, we as a regulator, we echo the international civil aviation mindset. We have strategic objectives mainly the safety and security. I've mentioned about the ensuring the competency of the crew. We are unable to make sure that or we are unable to qualify and to keep the crew certificates current because of the difficulty in traveling and going to the training centers and simulators for certain airplanes. But we had to come up with alternative procedures with adequate safety measures and security measures. But yet it is a concern, because what if this pandemic stays a longer time? What can we do? This is an important concern. Of course, the financial fitness of operators. This is extremely important. The financial fitness for airlines will reflect on its ability to meet the financial and the obligations, safety and security obligations, which are pivotal for the pure license or certification for any airline. Of course, sustainability for airlines and airports, which is licensed and certified by the civil aviation authorities around the world, knowing that any restart will not be other than a slow restart. There is a sustainability issue. Does this slow restart will be able to sustain the operations and sustain the integrity of and the financial stability of those operators? Additionally, we have questions about the liberalization and competition between airlines and the shrinking of airlines and cannibalization. We have concerns that possibly some airlines after this COVID-19 or during the pandemic possibly will disappear, and high possibility that they will disappear. It will have an impact on the competition, liberalization, and again on improvement, technology, and innovation. Some of the concerns we'd like to share with you. Those are our points that I was honored to share with you, and I will be pleased to have any questions regarding this, anything went into this presentation or anything else. Thank you, sir.
يعطيكم العافية Captain Misto. I'm sure you've done a great job so far in trying to maintain the situation in Jordan for the captains, for the airlines, and for overflying aircrafts above Jordan. Of course, you covered the points of what has been happening, what are the plans and the SOPs that were prepared in order to be ready whenever the situation, the pandemic situation allows us to open up. You built up on the government's success in treating the pandemic by adding the success of the CARC in that aspect. And unfortunately, we were surprised to see that Europe did not really put us on that list of countries that have been allowed to travel to Europe, but maybe you'll have an answer for that later. I would like to, of course, welcome our expert in Jordan, Dr. Talib Rifai, who has been for many years in the tourism field, but also has headed the United Nations World Tourism Organization for the past 12 years. Dr. Talib, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Michel. I'm no expert by no means. We've heard two very good experts in aviation. I'd like to thank Mr. Bakri and Captain Misto for their wonderful presentations. I think the information for us is very, very important. I want to say a few things here. One is, I still remember the days of the Icelandic ashes, where aviation in Europe stopped completely due to these ashes. It was the only time where the world realized how important aviation is, how important travel and tourism is. Today, we're having 10 times as much as that. It was a closure of 4 or 5 days, but it paralyzed the whole world. Today, the whole world is literally paralyzed. So the importance of aviation is clear to all of us. The contribution of aviation to GDP, to jobs, to the economy is clear and needs no proof to that. Second thing I want to talk about is the issue of sustainability of the businesses. I think there are three phases, as we have always said, to any recovery. Phase number one is to make sure the business stay alive. Staying the business alive, you need to pay money. You need to subsidize that. I don't think our government has done enough to sustain the aviation industries. Many countries around the world, especially in the US and Europe, subsidized some of the airlines. Otherwise, they go out of business. You have to keep them alive for a little while. Then, after that, you offer the domestic tourism, which we've already started. After that, we go to international tourism. Can't go just directly to international tourism without going through first two stages before that. Now, what I want to talk about here is the importance of testing. I believe that quarantine, and I completely agree with Mr. Bakri, quarantine is not an option at all. If you are going to quarantine for 2 weeks, anywhere you go, you're not going to travel at all because you can't spend two weeks of your
We lost you, Dr. Talib. We lost you. Can you put the mic on again or repeat what you last said?
يرجع.
I think we lost Dr. Talib Rifai. We had a question that came to us from Mr. Faiz Khlefat about the plan. They're asking about a date, any plan in order to share it with the tourism sector, with the partners outside. What should we expect? Yes, Captain, we're سامعين.
Sorry, I lost you for a while, so you need to know the date.
It's not just the date. I mean, partners outside are asking in Jordan, are you, do you have, of course, it's a date or at least an indication. Yeah. Are we going to open in the fall? Are we going to receive?
Okay. Yes. Okay. Let me say that it's clear that the country is mobilized to find solutions for this dilemma. And the challenge is because of the good, alhamdulillah, the good epidemiological situation in Jordan that puts extra stress on Jordan to take extra one more measures. However, I can assure you that currently work is in the final stages to come up with solutions to open up with the criteria. This criteria will be first risk-based criteria. The decisions on how to start and where to start, with whom to start will be evidence-based. It's not going to be subjective. It's going to be based on evidence. It's going to be transparent. And it's going to be practical. And it's going to evolve with time. So, as we have seen, even in Europe, they have opened up now for 14 countries. So they haven't opened up immediately, completely on all aspects. Welcome, Dr. Talib. We lost you for a while.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Please go on, Captain.
If you'd like to, if I can finish this. So, yes, I can assure all that serious efforts and steps are underway now. And soon we will have clear plan for the opening or the calculated opening and gradual opening for the airports. I can assure you that it is, again, I have said it, it is going to be risk-based approach and based on evidence, not subjective, clear methodology. And this should be, again, we don't want to give overestimation like the case in other countries in the world. Europe has opened partially with 14 countries. So again, we don't expect that Jordan will open with 100 countries because we have our obligations.
Thank you, Captain Misto. We go back to Dr. Talib to
I
listen to-
apologize. I apologize for this connection. It was out of our control. It was technology. Anyhow, I was talking a little bit about the quarantine.
Please go on, Dr. Talib.
The quarantine is a bad thing. Nobody's going to travel if they know they're going to be kept for 14 days. Every travel is 2-3 days, 4 days, a week maximum. You're not going to spend the whole 2 weeks in a home or being quarantined. That's for sure. Can you hear me, Michelle?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay. I said the quarantine is a bad idea. Quarantine, I'm glad that we are getting rid of it because nobody's going to travel if there is 14 days of being paralyzed. Your travels are less than that anyhow. But I think, and that's my question to Captain Misto now, testing is very, very important. I know testing is not reliable yet, but it's the only way we could get some kind of guarantee and alleviate some of the fears that are there. Where are we on testing, Captain? Testing is very, very important. Reliable, fast, and not expensive testing is very, very important. That's my first question. My second question has to do a little bit with the protocols that you're adopting. I understand that you are working with ICAO, which is a UN organization. It's a very good organization, and IATA, of course. But I know that WTTC, the World Travel and Tourism Council, has developed some protocols. Are you cooperating with them? Because I think it's important that now we get out of this lockout of not trusting international organizations. Every country is acting on its own now. Unfortunately, international organizations are doomed to be irrelevant. We don't hear anything about the United Nations, anything from them. We don't hear anything from the EU, Arab Union, so on and so forth. So I hope that these two questions could be answered by you, Captain Misto, and Mr. Bakri, if possible. One is about testing, and the other one is about protocols. Who are you cooperating with to develop these protocols? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Rifai. If I may, regarding the testing, I can assure you that the testing will be part of the reopening protocol in Jordan. And this is going to be a vital requirement, a prerequisite for anyone to come to Jordan. And of course, testing, when we say testing, it's going to be PCR, real-time testing. I'm going now technical a little bit. It's not the rapid test, because the rapid test accuracy is not so reliable. It's not so good. Again, we need a reliable testing. And the testing will be required from the country of departure within 72 hours, let's say.
Before you
depart. So yeah, it has to be practical. Again, some countries, when it's not one size fits all. So some countries, if there is higher risk, maybe we need dual testing. One from the departure 72 hours before and one after arrival. And this after arrival, it has to be again coordinated so we don't have masses at the airport, stranding at the airport waiting for the test and the test result. This will be all coordinated in an organized manner to assure, to balance between the opening and to assure that the pandemic will not be spreading uncontrolled.
Very good. I'm glad to hear that. Very good. Excellent.
I can assure that. For the second one, I think maybe I can say that. With whom you are coordinating? You've heard the CART, about the CART document, which has been published by the ICAO. It was published in coordination with other agencies, including the WHO. And I am not so sure with the WTC, but I think it has been, maybe Mr. Bakri can help in that, because again, IATA was part of it. And ICAL, International Airport Council International, ACI, as well. So maybe Mr. Bakri can add if WTC was on board in this document.
Thank you, Captain Misto. Abu Alia, would you like to add to that, please?
Sure, absolutely. If I may just clarify the question, I think the question was the travel safe stamp from the
TTC.
TTC. No, we were not part of it, to be honest with you. WTTC asked IATA to reference the biosecurity plans or the multi-layered approach that we had contributed in its entirety to ICAO to come up or participate in the buildup of the takeoff plan. And we agreed and we said, sure, fine, you can use it and you can reference it. But now we're not part of that safe travel or travel safe stamp at all.
Thank you. I think it would be good if you can consider that. Be very good.
Sure, but we also believe that, quite honestly, it's a sovereign decision. We cannot, as an association, we find it difficult to sort of, justify for somebody to override sovereign decision or the rights of a nation to say that that nation is safe or that nation is not safe. That has to be done by the nation itself, its own organizations based on internationally accepted standards and criteria, and perhaps overseen by international organization. But for a commercial organization or anybody else or a third party to come and rank a country as safe or not safe, it might create a lot of disparity, worldwide, and we need to be careful, when we consider that. Now, as we all know, has started already. Countries in the world have started already color coding based on the risks of countries, high risk, medium risk, low risks. And each country is coming up with its own ranking methodology, and that's the risk. We don't have uniformity of how we gauge risk. And we are starting right now speeding up the engagements with the World Health Organization and with ICAO to try to convince, all the related international organizations to come up with the similar methodology that could be used by all countries, rather than every country coming up with its own methodology, to assess the risk of country A or country B or country C. Will give you different results, of course, and will create a lot of reciprocal treatments. At the end of the day, it will slow down the restart of the travel and tourism industry, and it will keep us in this,
We don't have you, Mr. Bakri.
This miserable state.
Mr. Al-Bakri.
لا كلنا بوزد على فكرة. Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Al-Bakri, we lost the last 2 words.
I said, if we don't come up with a uniform approach that is agreeable and accepted globally, and how to rank the risks of countries when it comes to ranking countries, then every country will be at will coming up with its own approach, and that will create a lot of confusion. It will create a lot of maybe animosities between countries, reciprocal treatment. If country A ranks me as high risk, I will rank them as high risk as well. And here we go, we enter into a gridlock that will not help the industry at all.
You're absolutely right. It turns political, unfortunately.
We have
And
5 more questions. Again, thank you for that response. Mr. Bashir Dawood is asking about whether, for Mr. Al-Bakri, if there's a slide, because you showed a slide where the quarantine effect would mean about 83% of the people would not travel. Would you have a study showing if you opened without quarantine, what will be the indicator?
Yes, it's the up 90s, the 90%. I don't have the slide with me, but I can share it with you. I can share it with you later on, and you can share it with the audience, of course, yes. Very high percentage of people, when we ask the same question, will you be willing to travel to a destination that does not require quarantine? The response was extremely high, yes.
A question from Ghada Najjar to both our speakers. It seems, Captain Misto, you're fully prepared and your teams are fully trained now. You have done already a repatriation, cargo, domestic, private jets, etc. It has been 4 months. It's about time to open the airport. The industry is hurting badly. Why can't we look at other countries who opened their borders and they have similar cases like us and they are preparing and they announced already. Why can't we at least give estimate dates and announce the protocols?
Again, good question. This is a sovereign decision by government, as Mr. Bakri said. So each country has its own priorities. And for Jordan, it is realized the importance of opening. Definitely it is realized, and no one is arguing this issue at all. But we are trying to do the right thing and do things right. At the same time, there is a methodology, will be announced soon. I am confident that this should be announced soon in coordination with all relevant areas in Jordan, authorities. And it should be comforting for the government and for the passengers. Back to your question, who is going to fly? We need the passenger to be confident that he can fly again. The passenger confidence or the traveler confidence is important. And that's a challenge again, because there will be, now who is flying with the quarantine? Only essential travels. Those who want to get back to Jordan or to home, they are accepting the quarantine, but no one is accepting to be quarantined for tourism or for leisure travel. Of course, that's traditional, that's logical way how to approach it. But I can assure Ms. Ghada that work is underway, and hopefully we will hear the good news soon.
Mr. Al-Bakri, also from Ghada, about is there a testing that it seems is being done in China within 3 seconds you get a result?
Nonsense. Sorry to say that. Sorry, Ghada. Even PCR tests, with the nasal swabs has inaccurate readings as well and results. So any test that is being published in the news that within 2 minutes or within even 1 hour or 2 hours is absolutely unreliable, and that's why we continue to ensure and say that any test that a country would want to request really has to be fast, has to be accurate, has to be not invasive, and it has to be cheap in terms of not adding more cost for travelers and thereby preventing them from traveling. Some of these tests in Europe that are being published in Europe cost up to $200 per passenger. Now, who would want to pay $200, on this end and $200 on that end? That would make the trip, much more expensive. So no, the world has not come up with a test that meets a criteria that has been set by the ICAO guidelines yet, and therefore we continue to advocate with all governments around the world that when they consider testing, they really need to consider the criteria for which they select testing.
Mr. Ziad Fustok is asking, can we get some kind of indication on which countries' feeder markets will be included in the first phase of the reopening of the airport? Since not all countries that are today safe are part of the list of our feeder countries for tourism.
If this is for me.
Yes, Captain.
Again, the criteria for country selection is going to be evidence-based. The numbers, the mathematical numbers, mathematics will play an important role in these numbers, i.e., what we call the let's say, the amount or the numbers of mortalities in this country per million, the numbers of new cases, the trends, and the testing numbers. So the numbers will decide which countries. And I cannot forget the reproduction rate. That's what they call the R0. This is a purely technical issue for the, we became even acquainted with some medical expressions.
Thank you. Another question from Karim Mubarak to Captain Misto. Are you saying we're behind in opening up our airport to certain countries because Jordan does not have the immunity per capita like other countries?
No, no, that's not the case. Of course not. We can, but opening up, okay, we have, let's say, Mauritius is good, but are we interested to open up with Mauritius again? And Iceland is good, but again, there is a dimension about the economical. In addition to the epidemiological status for these countries, because we need to assure that no compromise on health issues as well. That's I'm sure it's the concern of everyone. We need to open up, but to strike the balance between this requirement and that requirement, both are important.
Mr. Al-Bakri, according to IATA Travel Center, it shows that flights to Jordan are suspended until the 14th of July. Any update on that? That's a question from Mr. Yanal Kurdi.
لا يفتى وملك في المدينة. I think that information which is we captured it based on NOTAMs published by Captain Misto's team. So Captain Misto can really update us on that.
It's thank you, Mr. Anyway, yes, we keep pushing, postponing the opening on timely intervals, and we wait for a different decision so we can open up the moment we have a high decision from the government that it is time, we are ready to open the airports fully.
So it means we don't have any indication at the moment.
At the moment, until the 14th of July, it is halted. But there is a possibility that we will be ready afterward. Yes.
But is it logical that the airport opens when we bring people on the 10th, 11th, 12th of July for a 14-day quarantine that we open up on
By the way, when we say it's closed, it's not closed. We have any traffic can depart Jordan. We have repatriation flights. We have cargo flights operational, and we have a private jets operational. But people coming to Jordan, they still can come with the quarantine, which is again not very practical. So this this thing is regarding the quarantine has to be reconsidered if the right people in the Ministry of Health again decide for that particular, because they are the one who are mainly concerned with this particular issue. We need their opinion, scientific opinion in this regard. Yet, it is not their call only, but with other parts. But the Ministry of Health people, they have to decide on that.
Before we wrap up, because we've taken a lot of time, but Mr. Al-Bakri has raised his hand, so we can take his
if I may, just a quick remark, or maybe some kind of question to Captain Misto, since we have the pleasure of having him with us this evening. You know, the CART report or the ICAO takeoff guidelines also talked about the concept of the public health corridors. These corridors are actually established between countries, you know, through bilateral agreements. I'm interested to know how far are we in Jordan really in discussions really to establish such corridors between Jordans and other countries, because that is a methodology recommended by ICAO, accepted by a lot of countries around the world. Starting from 2 months ago, China actually implemented that methodology. A lot of European countries are implementing it, and some Middle Eastern countries are actually implementing this public health corridors or safe corridors. So I'm really interested to see how far are we in Jordan really to establish some of these corridors, and why is it important? From our perspective, if I may, it really allows us all these measures and procedures that we have put in place, you know, from a regulation point of view, from a health point of view, airport, all the service providers, from airlines, to test these procedures, and then to really regain the traveler's confidence that air travel is possible. Yes, there are certain measures that are being added temporarily because of, the spread of the virus or because of their safety. But it also, helps regain their confidence that, air travel is doable and can be done in spite of these measures that are put in place.
Okay.
Thank you,
Sorry.
Yeah, no,
Back to
I'm
this
just thanking
question,
Mr. Al-Bakri,
Hassan.
please. It's
Okay.
your last statement, please.
Okay. Again, we are in dialogue and we are in communication with different countries to establish this public or this green to green or public health corridor concept. And we have started the cargo phase. It's a phased approach. We have started with the cargo harmonization of procedures, which is a requirement before starting the passengers. Again, it takes two to tango. So it's not enough for us to open up. You need the other side to open up to as well. And when we talk to another party, we need to have an importance for opening up with the other end that is important socially or economically in this regard. Yes, we are in contact, and hopefully there will be a higher umbrella on how to open and with whom to open, inshallah, very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we wrap up, I'm sure Mr. Amni Kawar, Chairman of JITOA, would like to put in a word.
Thank you, Mr. Bakri. Thank you, Captain Misto, for your insightful information that kept us abreast of the ongoings in the travel, tourism, and aviation industry. But I still have one question lingering for Captain Misto. I know we are going around the dates, and everybody is eager to know roughly when should we expect an airport opening. Will it be before Eid, Yani, as an example? Will the next Eid Fitr be witness an opening, or is that a restricted Eid like the previous one?
I can assure you, Mr. Kawar, that there won't be any unnecessary delay in reopening because we are all anxious to open. And I believe that it will happen sooner than later.
Inshallah. So the second half of July, let's say. Hopefully.
We target to do it because there are some logistical issues. Like, there is a need to have a lab at the airport.
That's right.
At both airports, you need to have a lab at Queen Ali Airport and Queen Hussein International Airport as well, because some flights will be going directly to King Hussein. You need to have that lab there, equipped and ready to function. And there is a logistical issue. So these things, other than that, the airports are ready. Airlines are ready, and we as regulators, we have done the oversight. So the moment the decision is issued, the airports will start with preparations, and I think there won't be any delay in this regard. Hopefully, the situation, the COVID-19 situation won't get worse and changes all plans. We have to connect this globally, regionally, and locally as well. Inshallah, everything will be under control.
If you monitor Lebanon Airport, which opened today, as an example, they started with a 10% capacity, meaning that they will increase it gradually so that they will be in full force within so many days. That's a good idea because you have new measures to adapt to and protocols and so forth. So I think it would be a good idea to escalate just to go slowly rather than go full blast. That's just an idea that our neighbors are doing now. Anyway,
Again,
thank you
the
very
10,
much.
10%, yes, 10% is it has to be a graduated opening, of course, but we need to have the right 10%, not only 10%. We don't want to have any decorative step. We need to have a practical step that reflects positively on airlines, on airports, on tour operators as well, on everybody.
Yes.
We don't want to have something on just on paper and just for the media that we are opening. We need something really fruitful.
I have to
Substantial.
give the floor for a second to Dr.
Thank
Talib
you.
Rifai.
Thank you
for
so
a minute
much.
Before we wrap up, please.
Thank you so much. I think Captain Misto is very clear. We're already opening more than 10%. We're opening into Aqaba, we're opening the private jets, we're opening the cargo jets. So I think the real crux of the matter here is the bilateral agreement, because now the international system is in a way based on bilaterals. Each country is doing it on its own. There is no international system, unfortunately, as we heard from Mr. Bakri and Mr. Misto here. So I think what we need to do is to accelerate bilateral agreements. We can't wait for the international system to help us. I believe in so. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you all.
On behalf of JITO and on behalf of all the participants, I would like to thank Mr. Mohammed Al-Bakri, who's the Regional Vice President for IATA for Africa and the Middle East, and thank Captain Haytham Misto, the CEO of the Civil Aviation in Jordan, for their insights. I'm sure everybody really benefited from this meeting. I'm sure we really pushed hard on having a date, which I'm sure it's not in the hands of anybody today, except that the Ministry of Health and the relevant authorities will decide on. The world is not, unfortunately, in a very good place today as it was 2 weeks ago. We're seeing an increase in the pandemic. But hopefully, the world will come out of it soon, and maybe new tests and new methods of testing and or a vaccine will show up as well, and we'll recover. Thank you, everybody, for participating, and wish you a pleasant evening.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Awni.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.